Hey everybody, welcome to Sweet Jesus, where ice cream is sweet and Jesus is sweeter. Hope you got to see my little thumbnail up there, the ice cream sandwich from Pav's. Last time I had chocolate chip cookie ice cream sandwich. This was a chocolate chip cookie cream sandwich. Delicious, but a little bit messy. So I had to eat it all before I got started. Hopefully, you've got an opportunity now to have your favorite dessert, whether that's ice cream sandwiches, a sundae, apple pie, cupcakes, whatever. Hopefully, something real sweet and something that you're able to enjoy right now while we talk about something even sweeter, and that is Jesus. If you remember last time, we talked a little bit about the words of Jesus from the cross. We talked about how uh, how God has kind of wired us and our need for community, and how he was thinking about his mother, Mary, and thinking about John, and he was kind of putting them together, and how can we be doing that, and what can we be doing to take care of the bodily needs and the physical human needs, emotional, social needs, all the needs of the people that God has placed around us. And we're going to kind of slide into a discussion, I think, that kind of flows out of that a little bit. Our need for community, our need for relationship goes beyond just other human relationships. We're going to see that today as we talk about the next two words of Christ from the cross. Last night, I got a little distracted with my wife and kids, got too late, wasn't able to pull this off. Apologize for that. But I think we can actually put them both together pretty easily. So the words of Jesus from the cross yesterday that I had up on my Facebook page were about the thief on the cross. It's in that story where the one thief is kind of railing against Jesus, like, "Hey, you supposed to be so special. Save yourself and us." And then, of course, the other thief kind of saying, "Hey, man, we're both here because we deserve it. We were both bad. We were both really bad. This guy was innocent." And then he says to Jesus, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And then Jesus' words, "Today you will be with me in paradise." Now, there's a lot of discussion out there about, well, what is paradise exactly? And there's talk about resurrection being the ultimate hope and return of Christ, the new heavens and the new earth, and this kind of in between, is it? Or I don't really want to get into any of that right now. What I want to focus on is what paradise for sure includes, and what for sure is the best thing about paradise, the new creation, whatever. Okay. The best thing about whatever it is that we have in store for us is that Jesus is with us. Today you will be with me, he says, in paradise. And that is really the key. Okay. Now, I tried to look this up. I had my wife try and look this up. I couldn't find it anywhere, but maybe you're familiar with a story that was going around in like email forwards for a while. It was a story about a Christian talking to an atheist about heaven. And the Christian says, "Well, like, why don't you believe in God? Why don't you believe in Jesus? Don't you want to go to heaven when you die?" "Well, what is this heaven like?" And the Christian starts to describe it, and he says, "It's just awesome. It's a place where all your friends are there, all your family, your long lost loved ones. You get to see them again. There is this. It's a place where there's no more pain and suffering and dying. There's no more crying. It's just amazing. It's wonderful." And then the atheist turns to the Christian and he says, "Huh? I think I like your heaven." The Christian says, "Really? Well, so does that mean you're going to believe in God? You're going to believe in Jesus, something like that?" Well, no, I love that heaven because everything you mentioned, I didn't hear a single thing about God. I could live there. It's really so much better done when you actually read the story. It's been so long. Tried to look for it, couldn't find anywhere. If any of you find that story somewhere, put in the comments or put a link in the comments or send me something somewhere to let me know that you found it, and I'll read it and hopefully do justice to this. But bottom line with that whole story is that you're talking to an atheist who doesn't believe in God, right? And then we typically talk about heaven when we talk about what we're all kind of hoping for as Christians. Most of the time, what gets us excited about it has absolutely nothing to do with the very thing, the very person that is who makes it what it is. Okay. When we look back at Genesis, we talked about this a little bit last time. We talked about how our need for relationship with other human beings is the one need we have because we're perfect, right? And so it's this idea that we had a need for community. uh, God looks at Adam and he says it's not good for the man to be alone. He says that before the fall into to sin, before anything goes wrong, right? So it's this need that we have because we're like God, and because we're like God, we need community, we need relationship. We talked a little bit about the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, how relationship and love and mutual service is at the heart of the eternal triune God, full and perfect. And then what happens that actually leads to this disruption of the creation, this cause of pain and suffering and dying. Okay, so what was also part of that story was not just that Adam and Eve were there together and there was this idea of human community, but that God was there too. God walked with them in the garden, in the cool of the day. So our human relationships are vitally important. But the relationship that matters the most is the one that we had with God. We're walking with him in a way. Yes, God is with us now and always. He is with us. He has promised to be with us, to never leave us, never forsake us. We're going to get to that in a little bit with what Jesus says next on the cross. He is always with us by the power of his Spirit. We know his presence because of the blood of the cross. We have access to him. We can come to him in prayer. But he is not with us the way that we hope that he will be, the way that we hope with certainty based on his promises, knowing the way he will be, the way we will see him face to face in eternity. That is kind of what we had, and that's why everything was perfect. And then the fall into sin and this need sort of for a holy God to remove himself from unholy human beings, unholy, ultimately would lead to this enormous mess of a world that we're in. We said we wanted a world without God in it, and that's the world we got. Hope, hope of a Christian is that one day God dwells with us again. Read Revelation chapter 21. It talks about the new heavens and the new earth coming down out of heaven. Talks about no more crying, no more suffering or pain, and be no more dying. And then it says pauses all the good stuff that we're hoping for. So if we have a heaven and we don't think about God, man, we got it all wrong. And if that's what makes us stick with Jesus, we're missing something. Missing something. I want to share a psalm with you. Um, Psalm 17. This was a psalm that I started reading because a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, had talked about when he was serving in the military in Desert Storm. It was 1991, and for me, I heard that story. It was 2017. I said, you know what? I should just really dig into a psalm and just try and get it down, try and get it memorized. It was the tail end of 2017, so I sort of carried it into 2018 a little bit, and it just became a really meaningful psalm for me. And one of the reasons is because of the very thing we're talking about. Towards the end of Psalm 17, verses 12 through 15, um, in the psalm, he's crying out to God. He's got all these enemies. They're trying to do all kinds of stuff to him. Doesn't know what to do exactly other than to cry out to God and say, "Hey, listen to me, hear me, help me." Okay. He's talking about his enemies in verse 17. He says, "He is like a lion eager to tear, as a young lion lurking in ambush. Arise, O Lord, confront him, subdue him, deliver my soul from the wicked by your sword, from men by your hand, O Lord, from men of the world whose portion is in this life." Okay, so first, before we get any further, he's asking God for very specific things, right? My enemy is trying to do bad things to me. There's all this danger around me. Protect me from it. Okay, so he is talking about sort of an immediate deliverance of some kind. Then he closes this and he says, now to attack, to come out against, their portion is in this life. You fill their womb with treasure. They are satisfied with children, and they leave their abundance to their infants. Okay, so he's talking about this worldly approach to life, that what they're hoping for from you is just these things that will ultimately not last. That I shall behold your face in righteousness. When I awake, I shall be satisfied with your light. Likeness and face, kind of the same thing. Um, what he's saying here is that all of this stuff that everyone else is chasing after, all these important things that we think are so important, the psalmist understands what's really important. And that is that one day he will awake. He will see God face to face. That's his reward. That's what he's looking for, in ways that I think we have really been unaware of, largely been unaware of. I know I've largely been aware of it until probably around 2017 when I got into this psalm and I started listening to some sermons and reading some books from some great theologians, great Christians, great teachers. Uh, we have tremendous issues with idolatry. Idolatry of all kinds. Idolatry just basically means we have issues with other gods. Idols were things, people would make images of gods that people would create and worship and offer things to. We don't do it that way today necessarily, but that doesn't mean we don't have gods. Doesn't mean we don't have things that we look forward to, that we hold up as important, that we believe will give us all the good that we need, that if we can only just have this or that, or if only, whatever it is that you are thinking when you say if only, however you finish that sentence, that's your idol. Right? It's really, really tough because once you start doing that, like I said, if only, ah, realize, oh my goodness, now I've got something I got to let go of. Because ultimately, the only thing I need is God. The only thing I really need is Jesus. When I awake, I shall see your face in righteousness. Um, that's the idea, and that's the joy of paradise. Today, you will be with me in paradise. It's the most important piece of it. We don't know a whole lot about what happens precisely at the moment we die. We don't know a whole lot about what everything else is going to be a part of with their faith in Christ. But we know this: the thing that we need more than anything is what we're going to get. And that is, we're going to see God. We're going to see Jesus face to face. And all that other bad stuff as a result is going to melt away. And we're going to have so much joy and so much peace and so much just fulfillment and contentment in ways that we could never have even begun to imagine. We will have that. I'm looking forward to it because, man, there's an awful lot of good stuff in this world. Um, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, even the stuff that's good kind of leaves us wanting more. Like, so good, and yet it's gone in an instant. The best moments are fleeting. The best moments still make us think, well, isn't there a way that this can be like this all the time? Uh, so me in paradise. Okay, I'm gonna try and transition now from "Today you'll be with me in paradise" to the next words of Jesus from the cross, which are, my God, why have you forsaken me?" I know most of you, all of you, probably, even if you go to church normally, uh, probably weren't able to go to church and worship tonight for Maundy Thursday, for Holy Thursday. But maybe you were able to do a live stream, get a live stream service with a church we were connected to back on Long Island. Nicely done service. My buddy Justin Vitrano out at the Life Lutheran Church in Old Westbury, and a really nice job. Um, and one of the things that is traditionally done at the end of that service, they strip the altar as Psalm 22 is being read. And Psalm 22 starts with, my God, why have you forsaken me?" So those words from Jesus are really leading to that whole psalm of just misery and agony and suffering that is about to take place. But I think it also speaks to the greatest suffering that is taking place on the cross. And we touched on this a little bit last time, but I want to try and hit it again because I did get cut off near the end, and I'm not sure it all got in. If you have ever had a relationship that ended, whatever that relationship was, um, the closer the relationship, uh, the more painful the separation, right? So, just like if you read about somebody in the next state over who's murdered or dies some tragic way, you go, "Oh, that's sad," but it doesn't. No, it doesn't hit you. Okay? You find out about somebody in your county that died, right? Whoa, close. How did that happen? I want to make sure that doesn't happen to me. Somebody in your own town, the smaller the town, okay, the more likely it's going to hit you. Imagine it's somebody you have known since high school. You graduated high school together. You're at your 20, 30, 40, 50-year reunion, and you find out they're dead. Hurts. Okay. Somebody you may have been married to, be a parent. The closer the relationship, the more painful the separation, whatever the reason, whether it's divorce or death or something else that causes that separation. Closer the relationship, the more painful, the more agonizing the separation. So now take that idea, okay? This was actually one of the chapters in The Reason for God, several chapters back. I'm not sure exactly which one. Um, but take that idea and draw it out a little bit. Intimate, most perfect relationship anywhere. Okay? And that relationship has been in existence since eternity and will go on into eternity. So take the pain that you have experienced in the various separations that you have endured and multiply it by infinity. That is the agonizing pain and misery that Jesus is experiencing on the cross as he cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you abandoned me? Why have you rejected me?" We know the answer. It's not because he doesn't love him, it's because he loves us. It's because he's doing something in this moment to make sure that we don't get rejected and abandoned and forsaken forever. There's a lot of ways that people throughout history have died more nobly, um, that have endured far worse physical suffering, perhaps. Although that's not to say that um, being crucified wasn't miserable. It was their expert way of making sure you suffered and making an example for everyone. The Romans were doing. There's some pretty awful stories about ways people have been killed throughout history, and they faced it with a whole lot more, not gonna let you get to me, right? Here's Jesus. My God, why have you forsaken me? Because he's enduring far more agony in an emotional, spiritual, relational way than any of that physical suffering. So, hell is really that ultimate, permanent, eternal separation from God. Not good. And that is what Jesus is enduring so that we never, ever, ever have that. That we always have the one thing, the one person that matters more to us than anything else at all. Not our jobs, not our bank accounts or the house we have or the car we have, not our spouses, not our kids, not anything that's even really risen to this. To having relationship with our Creator. Jesus is enduring what it is to be rejected permanently. And he's getting it for that moment in time so that we never have to. He is becoming sin, right? He became sin so that he who knew no sin became sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of. So something to think about, really think about, is as we contemplate tomorrow, Good Friday, what Jesus is actually enduring on that cross, adding just a completely different added perspective to that. And then also thinking about what it is that we have access to all the time. God never forsakes us, right? Behold, I am with you always, even to the very end of the age. And even Jesus, who in that moment, as God makes him sin who knew no sin, to be sin for us in our place, only temporary. Jesus knows how faithful God is, and God would never leave him dead in a grave. And that's what we're going to celebrate on Sunday. I think that's probably it for now. Hope that gives you something to think about. And as we go through this Holy Week and the Easter season on Sunday and on the days and weeks to follow, that you would treasure, that you would seek the one thing that is most important, and that is God. That is our relationship with Him. That is talking with Him and communicating with Him and just reveling in him and his glory and his goodness and his love and his mercy and his grace and just so many things, and just kind of sitting in it and enjoying God for who he is, not for what he can do for you. Do you like people that only come to you when they need you? I mean, I don't. Do you consider those friends? Do you consider them people that you really want to spend a lot of time with? Do you think they care about you, really? Let's take some time in these next few days and in the Easter season to just enjoy what we have now because of what Jesus endured on that cross. We have access to the presence of God, that veil is torn in two in the temple, and we can go straight to God now because of what God has done for us in Jesus, because of the blood of Christ on that cross. Let's just focus a little bit more on that in these days ahead. uh, this virus and the stay-at-home orders really helping provide some opportunities to facilitate that. Um, let's make sure we take advantage of it. All right, everybody, great to be with you. You got any questions, comments? Please feel free to throw things on there. Let me know what you think. Let me know how this is impacting you, what you're thinking when you hear these words of Jesus. Try and find me on Facebook, and hope to get a chance to catch up with you soon. Remember, ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is sweeter. God bless you. Good night.